Lord Henry's philosophy in The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I did touch on in my last video, which is that real beauty ends where the intellectual expression begins, is very disturbing to me because you can see how it could deceive somebody like Dorian Gray very easily. Right. It's really the preface for all of the really destructive, horrible things that happen much later on in the story. And I think the reason why it is so easily deceptive is that it does indeed promise anybody, or particularly, I guess, gullible people like Dorian, a safety net away from the indoctrination of, the educational system, right? Or a society that's being controlled by Christianity. And instead, it, like the movement that you see, the hippie movement that you see, that I remember listening to a few videos about a few years ago, Laurel Canyon. It's about the emptying of the mind, the rejection of the educational system, this kind of a Zen philosophy that involves getting rid of repressed sexuality, which is conservatism has been supposedly largely responsible for, right? And curing the repressed sexuality with these really, in the case of Dorian Gray, this kind of debauchery, this sort of total disregard for norms, and it's also very similar to the Adam and Eve story, right? The transition between a gullible character, naive character, to somebody being sensual and destructive, brought about by the influence of another figurehead in his life, another figure in his life that is much, much smarter, more cunning. But I think, another point I wanted to make before I get into the next subject is that Christopher Hitchens, who I've mentioned before, the social commentator, the author, he said that he was talking about the Zen philosophy in Buddhism, the idea that of emptying the mind. But what that really is eliminating reason. When you eliminate reason, that gives birth to monsters, and it was something to that effect. That was one of the things he brought up in one of his debates, and that is also ties into the philosophy of the hippie movement of Laurel Canyon. And it did make me think about John Rowe's movement in my own book series, because one idea I've been toying with, I don't know whether I'll use it or not, is the sort of evil infiltration of the vaudeville theater, which originally had expressed something very beautiful, very transcendental, largely because of Edmund, that he brought in real humor, which is supposed to edify, supposed to really educate people, but instead it turned into all these really bizarre perversions that were brought on by these people who wanted to destroy the entire purpose of that little venue, that little artistic world that was supposed to do that society a lot of good. And so I think here is another example of things that are very similar, and that I want to get into more in some form in the book series, whether it's through vaudeville or maybe something perhaps even more powerful. I don't know, but the bottom line is I think that John Rowe is like as I explained in the last video, a more modern, degenerate sort of version of the way that Lord Henry is. And Lord Henry is also far more cunning, and I think far better at manipulating than John Rowe was.